Welcome to our deep dive into the art of persuasion.
Oh, yeah?
We're going to be exploring excerpts from How to Make People Do What You Want by James W. Williams.
Okay.
So get ready for some practical techniques
Yeah.
and some fascinating insights into how all this persuasion stuff works.
Cool.
Don't worry, we're not advocating for manipulation or anything like that.
Right.
Think of it as leveling up your communication skills so you can really get your message across.
It's fascinating how often, brilliant ideas just totally fall flat.
Yeah.
The book opens with a story about a Nike ad campaign
Okay.
that Williams, the author, he was super excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
But when he pitched it,
Yeah.
it just didn't resonate.
Yeah.
And the book dives into why this happens.
Right.
And how to avoid it.
Yeah, I think we've all had those moments where we feel like we're speaking a different language, even when we have a great idea.
Yeah.
So what's the secret sauce? What makes a message truly persuasive?
The book argues that it's not just about the words themselves.
Okay.
It's about crafting them in a way that connects with people on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to not only just hear your message, but to really absorb it.
Yeah.
And act on it.
Right.
Think about it. Whether we realize it or not, we're constantly sending these messages. And we're trying to influence others every single day.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so it's not just about big presentations or sales pitches.
Right.
It's about everything.
Yeah.
From convincing your friend to try a new restaurant to nailing that job interview.
About everything.
So how do we get better at this?
Well, Williams emphasizes this persuader's mindset.
Okay.
And it all starts with confidence.
Okay.
He shares his own story of overcoming crippling social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a powerful reminder that confidence is a journey,
Yeah.
not a destination.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I used to get so nervous speaking up in meetings, but the more I did it, the easier it became.
Yeah,
It's like building a muscle, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And the book gives some great practical tips
Okay.
for boosting your self-confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Challenging those negative inner voices.
Mhm. Yeah.
We all have those.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing those limiting beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and actively choosing to replace them
Yeah.
with more empowering ones.
It's like flipping the script in your head.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you say, I'm getting better at this with every try.
And remember, building confidence takes time.
Yeah.
It's like Simon Sinek says about love.
Right.
It's a process
Right.
that unfolds over time.
Uh-huh.
The same goes for persuasion.
Okay.
Patience is key.
Yeah.
And building genuine relationships
Mm-hmm.
is far more effective than trying to force things.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think we've all encountered those pushy salespeople
Right.
who just make you want to run the other way.
Right.
Yeah.
The book highlights the importance of valuing relationships
Okay.
over those quick wins.
Mm-hmm.
There's an anecdote about a missed business opportunity
Uh-oh.
because the focus was on the immediate sale
Ew.
rather than building a long-term relationship.
Ouch, that's gotta sting.
Yeah.
So how do we make those genuine connections
Totally.
that pave the way for persuasion? I know the book talks about the importance of likability.
Likability is huge.
Yeah.
There's a great story in the book about two team leaders
Okay.
at a supermarket.
Right.
One was really strict and focused on efficiency,
Okay.
while the other was friendly and focused on building relationships.
Okay.
Guess who had the more motivated and productive team?
I'm guessing it was the one who prioritized those personal connections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being charming or charismatic. It's about being genuinely interested in the other person.
And about building trust.
Okay.
Even small things.
Yeah.
Like using the person's name,
Uh-huh.
admitting when you're wrong,
Right.
and being willing to share your own vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
appropriately, of course,
Right.
can go a long way in building that foundation of trust.
Okay, so we've talked about confidence and likability as foundations for persuasion.
Right.
But what about those situations where we feel like we're just not good at talking to people? I know the book has a chapter on talking to anyone with confidence.
The book acknowledges that building confidence
Okay.
and communication
Yeah.
is a process,
Uh-huh.
but it offers some really actionable advice.
Great.
One of the things it emphasizes is starting small.
Okay.
Engage people based on their mood.
Mm-hmm.
Find that common ground.
Right.
Maybe it's the weather or a shared interest.
Yeah.
And focus on building that initial rapport.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I overthink things and get in my own head. it's better to just focus on connecting with the person in front of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now get ready for some truly mind-blowing stuff.
Okay.
The book delves into the psychology of persuasion,
All right.
introducing 3 key concepts: schemas, priming, and spreading activation.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
Schemas are basically mental frameworks
Okay.
that we use to make sense of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like this.
Yeah.
You see a cat, and you form a schema for cat.
Okay.
It's furry, it meows, it has a tail.
Right.
But then you see a lion,
Yeah.
and you have to, like, adjust that schema.
Oh.
Because a lion is bigger,
Yeah.
roars, has a mane.
So schemas are like those mental shortcuts
Yeah.
our brains use to categorize information.
Exactly.
Okay.
And priming is about, like, activating those schemas, right?
Exactly.
Think about those food commercials that make your mouth water.
Oh, yeah.
They're priming your hunger schema, making you crave whatever they're selling.
Wow, that's crazy how these subtle cues can influence our thoughts and actions.
And what about spreading activation?
Yeah, what about that one?
I mean, are you familiar with that one?
Not really. No.
Spreading activation is the idea that activating one concept can trigger a cascade of related thoughts.
Okay.
Let's say I say the word pets.
Okay.
What comes to mind?
Dogs, cats, maybe fish. Taking my dog for a walk.
Yeah.
Oh, and that funny video of a cat playing the piano I saw online.
See?
Yeah.
One word triggered this whole chain reaction of thoughts.
Right.
And even emotions.
It's like those word association games we played as kids.
Yeah.
One word leads to another and another.
And this is where it gets really interesting from, like, a persuasion standpoint.
Okay.
By understanding these concepts, you can approach persuasion more strategically.
Okay.
You know, by priming specific schemas
Yeah.
and guiding that flow of thought,
Uh-huh.
you can subtly influence people's perceptions and decisions.
So it's like you're planting seeds in their minds. And then through spreading activation, those seeds grow into a whole forest of thoughts and feelings.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And speaking of influencing perceptions, let's move on to the power of language.
Okay.
The book argues that how you frame and word your message drastically affects how it's received.
Okay, I'm all about wordplay, so I'm ready for this.
Okay.
Give me an example.
Think about the word but.
Okay.
If you say, he's a great worker, but he's always late.
Okay.
It has a very different emphasis than saying he's always late, but he's a great worker.
Right.
The same information, but with a completely different spin.
Right. The but kind of negates whatever came before it.
Exactly.
So in the first example, you're highlighting the lateness.
Right.
But in the second example, you're emphasizing the positive quality of being a great worker.
The book also dives into NLP techniques,
Okay.
which stands for neuro-linguistic programming.
Mm-hmm.
It's about using hot words
Okay.
that trigger specific senses and emotional states. For example, phrases like imagine or what if
Oh, that's good.
draw the listener in
Yeah.
and create a more receptive mindset.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah,
It's like you're inviting them to step into a world where your idea is already a reality.
exactly.
Right.
And these techniques can be incredibly powerful
Yeah.
when used strategically and ethically, of course.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, this is all super interesting.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah, we have.
We've talked about the importance of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
building genuine relationships, the psychology of schemas and priming, and how the way we use language can make a huge difference in getting our message across.
It's all connected.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Now we get to the really interesting stuff.
Okay.
Remember how the book emphasizes that our bodies are constantly sending these subconscious messages?
Oh,
It's like a whole other language happening beneath the surface.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
I talked about how our posture, our gestures,
Right.
even our facial expressions can influence how others perceive us
Exactly.
and how we feel about ourselves.
Right.
It's crazy.
That's where embodied cognition comes in.
Okay.
It's the idea that our physical actions can actually influence our mental and emotional states.
Interesting.
There's this fascinating study
Okay.
where people were asked to hold a pen in their mouths,
Okay.
forcing either a smile or a frown.
Okay.
And guess what?
What?
The people smiling actually reported feeling happier.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Just holding a pen in their mouth?
It's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to try that out later.
It's a powerful reminder that our minds and bodies are like deeply interconnected.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So think about how this applies to persuasion.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to convince someone of something, but your arms are crossed
Yeah.
and you're frowning.
Right.
What message are you really sending?
Yeah, that's not exactly conveying openness and receptiveness. It's
Right.
more like, stay away, I'm not interested.
Exactly.
So what are some body language cues that we should be aware of?
The book breaks down a whole bunch of cues and their subconscious meanings.
Okay.
Head nodding, posture, eye contact, even how much you expose your chest.
Wow.
And of course, hand gestures.
Tell me more about mirroring.
Okay.
I remember that being mentioned. It's
Yeah.
kind of pretty powerful.
Mirroring is huge.
Okay.
By subtly reflecting the other person's body language, you create a sense of rapport and connection.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
saying we're on the same wavelength.
And I remember reading about something called the punctuator.
Right.
What was that all about?
The punctuator is a specific gesture
Okay.
someone uses to signal agreement or understanding.
Okay.
It could be a slight head nod,
Mm-hmm.
a raised eyebrow,
Mm-hmm.
anything consistent.
Okay.
Once you identify it,
Right.
you can use it to gauge their receptiveness to your ideas. Gotcha. So for example, you're explaining something
Yeah.
and they use their punctuator.
Okay.
Bingo.
Yeah.
You know, they're with you.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for their thoughts.
Uh-huh.
Okay, on to another fascinating topic. Social pressure.
Right.
We all know it exists,
Yeah, for sure.
but I'm ready to dive deeper.
This topic can feel ethically tricky,
Yeah, it can.
but it's essential to understand.
Right.
Social pressure is everywhere,
It really is.
and it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
The book talks about this experiment
Okay.
by Darren Brown,
Okay.
where he subtly influenced people to stand up at the sound of a bell.
Interesting.
They weren't explicitly told to do it,
Okay.
but they saw others doing it,
Yeah.
so they conformed.
Wow, it's like we're hardwired to follow the crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how many times you've done something just because everyone else was doing it, even if you weren't totally sure about it.
It all goes back to our evolutionary roots.
Okay.
Conformity was key to survival in our tribal past.
Right.
We're programmed to want to fit in
Yeah.
and avoid social rejection.
It makes sense.
The book highlights the ash line experiment,
Okay.
which demonstrates how easily people will doubt their own perceptions
Wow.
when faced with a group consensus.
Yeah, there's a part in the book that talks about people choosing the wrong answer
Uh-huh.
just because everyone else did,
Right.
even though it was clearly the wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much influence the group can have.
It's essential to distinguish between two types of influence.
Okay.
Normative influence is when we conform to avoid social disapproval,
Okay.
like laughing at a joke you don't get
Right.
just
Yeah.
because everyone else is laughing.
Right.
And then there's informational influence,
Okay.
where we conform because we genuinely believe the group knows more than we do.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to decide where to eat
Yeah.
and everyone in your group says a particular restaurant is amazing,
Mm.
you're more likely to go along with it.
Right.
Then there's the bystander effect.
Okay.
You might have heard of it.
Yeah, I have.
The book explains this phenomenon using the research of Darley and Latane,
Okay.
who found that people are less likely to help someone in need
Wow.
when other people are present.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
But I've definitely seen that happen.
It happens all the time.
It's like everyone assumes someone else will take care of it.
It's called diffusion of responsibility.
Okay.
We assume someone else will help.
Right.
So we don't have to.
Right.
Plus, there's audience inhibition.
Okay.
We don't want to look foolish if we overreact.
So how do we use social pressure ethically? Seems like a slippery slope.
The book emphasizes that ethical persuasion is never about coercion
Okay.
or manipulation.
Right.
It's about leveraging social norms
Okay.
and the principle of reciprocity to guide behavior in positive directions.
So for example, instead of saying nobody does that, you could say most people in this situation find it helpful to. Exactly. Or you could highlight positive social norms.
Right.
Like, we're a team that always supports each other. You're not forcing anyone,
Right.
but you're subtly shaping the environment
Yeah.
and influencing behavior.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about nudging people in the right direction
Uh-huh.
without taking away their freedom of choice.
Exactly.
Okay, now on to a topic that I think we can all relate to. Repetition.
Yes, repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition is more powerful than we realize.
Yeah, I think so.
It makes things feel familiar,
Uh-huh.
safe,
Yeah,
and comfortable.
right.
The book uses this example of Mark, who initially hated yoga,
Okay.
but his wife Melissa loved it
Okay.
after being exposed to it repeatedly.
Yeah.
Going to classes with Melissa, hearing her talk about it,
Huh.
he eventually started enjoying it too.
That's totally the mere exposure effect at work.
Exactly.
Repeated exposure, even to something we initially dislike,
Right.
can create positive associations. Yeah, like if you hear a song on the radio a bunch of times,
Yeah.
you might start liking it, even if you didn't care for it at first.
Right.
It even works with our own faces.
Oh, really?
There's a study where people preferred mirror images of themselves
Interesting.
because that's what they were used to seeing.
So weird.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, our brains are so weird.
Yeah.
So how does this apply to persuasion?
Imagine your mind is a jungle.
Oh, okay.
Every time you repeat a thought or action, you're clearing a path through that jungle.
Okay.
Over time,
Yeah.
that path becomes a well-worn road, making it easier and more natural to travel.
Right.
So by consistently repeating your message,
Yeah.
you're creating those neural pathways in the listener's mind.
It's like drilling the message into their subconscious.
Yeah.
So in practice, that would look like using consistent branding, repeating key phrases, or just maintaining a consistent tone and approach over time.
Exactly. It's about making your message a part of the person's normal.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's talk incentives.
Okay.
This one seems pretty straightforward.
It does.
Reward good behavior.
Yeah.
And you'll see more of it, right?
Yeah, I remember using that strategy with my dog. Treats for good behavior, and he learned quickly.
Right.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just bribing people.
There's a whole psychology behind it.
Okay.
The book starts with this classic pigeon experiment.
Okay.
Pigeons were given treats at random intervals, and they started repeating whatever behavior they were doing when the treat appeared, even if it was totally random and nonsensical.
So it's about creating an association between the action and the reward.
Exactly.
Okay.
Even if it's not a logical connection.
Right.
And this leads to a key distinction.
Okay.
Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Okay, what's that?
Intrinsic motivation is when you do something because you find it personally rewarding. Extrinsic motivation is when you do something for an external reward.
Okay.
Like money or praise.
So if you're trying to motivate someone long-term, it's better to tap into their intrinsic motivation rather than just relying on external rewards.
Yeah, but of course those external rewards can be effective in the short term.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And here's a fascinating insight.
Okay.
The size of the incentive doesn't always correlate with its effectiveness.
Oh, really?
Sometimes smaller incentives are actually more effective,
Okay.
especially over the long haul.
Why is that?
Because smaller incentives can avoid creating a sense of pressure or obligation.
Okay.
It feels more like a genuine gesture of appreciation rather than a bribe.
Right.
Plus, remember, incentives don't always have to be monetary.
Oh, right.
It could be something as simple as praise, recognition, a chance to learn something new, or even the satisfaction of helping others.
That's a good point.
Now let's touch on a few more advanced strategies from the book.
Okay.
They can be helpful in those higher stakes situations.
Right.
One of them is the power of scarcity.
Okay.
We're naturally drawn to things that are limited or exclusive.
Oh, yeah.
Like those limited time offers or only a few spots left. Marketing tactics.
Yeah.
I fall for those all the time.
Me too.
It's like that feeling of, if I don't act now, I'm going to miss out.
Right.
It creates a sense of urgency and increases the perceived value of whatever it is you're offering.
But it's important to use this technique ethically, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't create false scarcity or mislead people about the availability of something just to pressure them into a decision.
Okay, good to know.
What other advanced techniques are there?
Yeah, what else is there?
Right. How about anchoring?
Okay.
It's the idea of setting a reference point that influences subsequent judgments.
Okay.
For example, imagine you're negotiating a salary. By starting with a higher number, you're setting an anchor that influences the rest of the discussion.
So even if the final salary is lower than your initial anchor, it's likely to be higher than if you had started with a lower number.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like setting the bar high and then adjusting from there.
Right.
This can be used in all sorts of contexts, from pricing products to setting expectations in a negotiation.
Right.
But remember, subtlety is key here.
Okay.
You don't want to come across as overly aggressive or manipulative.
So it's all about finesse.
Yeah.
And framing things in a way that feels natural and authentic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've covered so much in this deep dive already.
We have.
Remember, mastering persuasion is an ongoing journey.
For sure.
It's about constantly honing your skills, observing those subtle social dynamics,
Right.
and adapting your approach to each unique situation.
It's like becoming a communication ninja.
Yeah.
Always learning and adapting our techniques. Okay, so we've learned so much about the psychology of persuasion and some really powerful techniques. But I think it's important to step back for a second and consider the ethical implications of all this.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Persuasion is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
Right.
The book really drives home the point that ethical persuasion is about building genuine connections, fostering mutual respect, and influencing behavior in a way that benefits everyone involved.
So it's not about manipulating people or taking advantage of their vulnerabilities. It's about creating win-win situations where everyone feels heard and respected.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings us to like a crucial point.
Okay.
Self-awareness.
Okay.
The more self-aware you are, the more ethically you can use persuasion.
Makes sense.
It's about understanding your motivations,
Yeah.
recognizing your own biases, and being mindful of the impact your words and actions have on others.
So before we even try to persuade anyone, we need to check ourselves and make sure our intentions are in the right place.
Right.
Okay.
And self-awareness also means being observant of the other person.
Okay.
Pay attention to their body language, their tone of voice, their overall demeanor.
Right.
Are they engaged? Are they resistant? Are they feeling pressured or uncomfortable?
It's like being a communication detective.
Yeah.
Picking up on those subtle cues so we can adjust our approach and make sure we're not crossing any boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how to integrate all these principles into everyday life.
Okay, how do we do that?
It's one thing to understand the theory,
right?
But how do we actually become more persuasive communicators in all areas of our lives?
Right. We don't want this to be just a bunch of head knowledge.
Yeah.
We want to be able to put it into practice.
Exactly.
So where do we start?
It starts with being mindful of your communication style.
Okay.
Are you a good listener? Do you ask clarifying questions?
Okay.
Do you acknowledge and validate other people's perspectives?
Those sound like foundational skills.
They are.
That are essential for building strong relationships.
Yeah.
Not just for being persuasive.
Absolutely.
Oh,
and don't underestimate the power of nonverbal communication.
Right.
Pay attention to your posture.
Yeah.
Your eye contact, your overall demeanor.
Yeah.
Are you projecting confidence? Are you being approachable and engaging?
It's amazing how much those nonverbal cues can influence how others perceive us.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
Think about all the techniques we've discussed. What's one small way you could apply one of those techniques in a positive and ethical way today?
It could be something as simple as really listening to a friend who's going through a tough time, framing a challenging situation at work in a positive light, or using a story to make a compelling point in a meeting.
The key is to be intentional and mindful.
Okay.
Use your newfound knowledge to create positive change in your life.
Right.
And in the lives of those around you.
I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Persuasion isn't about tricks or manipulation.
Right.
It's about understanding human psychology and using that knowledge to communicate more effectively and ethically.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the art of persuasion.
Yeah, it's been great.
Hopefully you've gained some valuable insights and practical strategies that you can start using right away.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.